Yo, 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 this is Steve. This is episode 4 of the podcast. Today we're going to be talking about whether it's a good idea to pay college athletes and a few other stories dealing with that. Different projects and, without further ado, let's play the intro.
What's up, you mother suckers? Get jiggy with us. You know why? Because we're stuck on the island.
Okay, so this is episode 4. So today, trying something a little different. I don't have my camera set up, so if you guys are watching on YouTube, you guys will just be looking at the screen capture. I might try this from now on, just depending on how this works out. It's a lot easier to set up, but I think I'll be able to stay consistent with podcasting and stuff like that. Not let life kind of take its toll on me. And so yeah. If you guys are watching, we got the screen capture today. I'll be on my tablet, so I'll be drawing a little bit and going over the usual stuff. So yeah, today I want to talk about scholarships, degrees, college athlete stuff. For those that don't know, I play football at the University of Hawaii, and I was there for 3 years. I played football there for 3 years, but I ended up quitting the team, having my second hip surgery, and then transferring to a different school. As I kind of think about it, it doesn't really sound like the way I describe it, I transferred, but I also got my degree, and so I ended up just going to another school, so I was there for 4 years. I was there for 4 years in undergrad, and then, but I was only there for three years as a football player. And so with that, I ended up getting my degree, got my BA, and then I transferred to Oregon State. And got there, ended up getting my master's, and so I was there for 2 years. And so, ultimately I was there. I've been in college. I went to college for 6 years. And during those 6 years, I was a student athlete. And so normally you get 4 years, you get 5 years to play 4. But and that includes a medical or a red shirt year, and then you get 4 to play 4. Some people do 5.5 years, and that's just with a gray shirt year. And that gray shirt year allows you to come in the spring, and so instead of starting in the fall, you come in the spring. And then you have the opportunity to do a red shirt year, and then the 4 to play 4. And so that's kind of in a nutshell how it works. When I kind of got in the middle of the whole June Jones leaving University of Hawaii sort of situation, where it was down to me. I was one of June Jones's recruits, and so when June Jones left Hawaii, Greg McMackin left with him. And then they ended up going to SMU. And so when they went to SMU, I was thinking about decommitting and actually going there with them. But I didn't end up doing that because they ended up offering Greg McMackin the head coaching job after he got to SMU. And so after that, they essentially were like, well, if you go on the recruiting trip, there's no guarantee that we'll keep your scholarship available for you. And so and this, mind you, this is right before they I want to say the week or two before signing day. So people were just scrambling around at that point. And so it was a couple weeks before signing day. I was going to go on a recruiting trip to SMU, and then and then Hawaii made Greg McMackin the head coach, and then they're like, well, if you go on the recruiting trip, obviously they knew about it because they would, Greg McMackin was at SMU when I set it up, but after that they were like, well, if you go on the recruiting trip, we can't guarantee that like your scholarship is going to be there. So I ended up just staying with Hawaii, and for me it made sense, just because Greg McMackin was the defensive coordinator, June Jones is the offensive coordinator and the head coach, but I, on the day-to-day stuff, like I'll be dealing with the defensive coordinator because I was going to be recruited as a corner. And so it just made a lot more sense at that point. And, I don't regret my decision, because I based my decision off of, where I wanted to live and the experiences that I wanted outside of football. And so I ended up making my football decision based off of the stuff that like didn't relate to football, but more related to real life in terms of like, if I did get injured and I wasn't able to play again, would I rather be in Texas or would I rather be in Hawaii? And for most people, they probably want to be in Hawaii. And that was me too. I never, I've been to like Jamaica once and like, Baja California or Mexico, like once or twice. And so I but like I didn't have a passport or anything. And so I never thought that I would ever like go to Hawaii or, live there or do any of those things. Just coming from Sacramento, and, people just don't really do that very often. And so, at least not where I'm from. And so it was just one of those things. And so I ended up making that decision, went there, enjoyed it, and like when I describe it, it's more of like I always say, I enjoyed it the first month there and then the last month there. And part of it's true, it's kind of a blur, but like the experience of living in Hawaii is it's an interesting experience, and I ended up getting injured, and so I got injured. I tore my hip flexor, or like I tore like my labrum and stuff, and I would say I tore like my hip flexor and my labrum the end of my freshman year, so end of my redshirt freshman year. And so I got there in 2008, and then I ended up like going through as a redshirt, and then came to spring 2009, and at the end of that I got injured. And so I ended up going through the summer with that pain, and they're like, oh yeah, like you just got to rehab it and stuff like that. And so I ended up having to get like two or three, second opinions. Luckily I had Kaiser insurance. Some people don't like Kaiser, but for me, it actually worked out. And so I ended up having to get a second opinion. And then from there, I finally got my, my surgery in fall of 2009. And so I was 19, I had my first hip surgery, and the process was like 8 months of recovery. And so after 8 months, then I was able to go about like actually work out and stuff. And so it wasn't until spring of like the end of spring 2010. Yeah, it was like summer 2010 that I was actually able to work out. And so, from fall 2009 to summer 2010. And so I ended up just like working out, doing a whole lot of stuff. And then, I ended up like making the travel squad for, fall 2010. And so that ended up being my like sophomore year, my redshirt sophomore year, but it was actually it was my redshirt sophomore year, but ended up being like my quote unquote like medical redshirt freshman year. And so I was a medical redshirt freshman, but I was also a sophomore. And then on top of that, like in school, I was a junior. And so it was like this weird sort of dynamic where I was like a junior in school. In like football, I was like a redshirt sophomore, and then in that I was a medical redshirt freshman. And so from there, I ended up doing doing pretty decent. The coach didn't really like my position coach didn't really like me, so that was a thing. But then they ended up converting me to a safety in spring 2010, and then I had to go through those things. Go through a lot of adversity. Learning a new position, dealing with kind of the bureaucracy of all that. And so after that, we made it to fall 20. Was it? Yeah, it was spring 2011. Yeah, and then summer, and then fall 2011. I ended up having my second hip surgery, and so I ended up having that one, and that's when I quit the team. And so from there, that was my experience at Hawaii. And so afterwards, I went through fall or spring 2012, graduated, and then I moved over to Oregon State, and pretty much had, I would say like the best experience the experience that I wanted out of like college athletics. But from then, just trying to get my clearance and all those different things, you kind of went over, like I went through all that stuff. And as, I started going into the creative arts, and I started trying to do a whole bunch of different things to the point where, I was a non-traditional student athlete. And so from there, after I finished up, I started doing a whole bunch of, philanthropic work as a Oregon State athlete. I hosted 2 art exhibits. I just, wanted to use my platform as something that, was good for the community. And that's where I kind of ran into a whole bunch of problems. And so not only did I deal with, the injuries, but I also dealt with the off the field stuff that the NCAA kind of just like screws you over with. And so I ended up afterwards, it was to the point where I couldn't, I hosted an art event, and, there was money involved because they had to pay to come in or like pay for donations. And a lot of the pretty much all the proceeds, I didn't make any money off of it. All the proceeds were going to the Boys and Girls Club and the American Heart Association, as well as the like a local homeless shelter for winter clothing and stuff like that. So the goal is to make like a whole bunch of donations of art and money and clothing to them, so that I could endure those harsh winters in Oregon, because it gets really, really cold, and it was snowing and stuff like that. And the problem was that the NCAA didn't want me to like see or touch the money. So anything dealing with the money, I literally had to go into another room. Even though I was hosting the event, if there were any transactions made, I could actually lose my eligibility. And so I was like, what the heck? Like, this is crazy. I'm trying to do some good. And then like, at the end of the day, like I might lose my eligibility because because there's people that are, trying to help me financially with the cause. And so from there, I ended up writing my thesis on kind of like my experiences, and then you realize that like, money is always a big thing, and it's not even like the like that that athletes are being greedy. It's just that there's a bureaucracy on, like who can do what with the platform that they have. And so it becomes more of an issue of free will and freedom of choice, and an open market, opposed to trying to take advantage of the system. And I always parallel this to when people talk about like food stamps and government assistance. It's like they're trying to like screw the system over when they should just be grateful that they have what they have. And it's like, no, that's not really the case, because there's a lot of things that are being sacrificed. And it's a touchy topic, especially when you come into like creative arts and, people that are creating content nowadays, us being millennials, or creating content. We have our social media followings, we have all these things. But if we weren't a student, we'll be able to work on these things. You're looking at people that have a platform and they have like 100,000 followers, and they're in college, and they like to do art, or they like to do video games. And they have people that want to be in part of that stuff, you know, in terms of merchandise, t-shirts, like stickers, signing stuff. And if they weren't an athlete, they'll be able to do all these things and capitalize on them and actually allow their careers or their brands to flourish. But because they're part of the NCAA, the only people that are able to do that stuff are the schools or the NCAA, and none of the athletes get any of that. You know, they get books and stuff like that. And for people that don't know, like the NCAA scholarship only covers the cost of room and board. Like it only covers the cost of room and board and just regular like school books and stuff. They don't count the cost of, you know, miscellaneous expenses, you know. And so if, you know, you need to get a computer, if you need to get certain things to actually like live comfortably, they won't take that into consideration in the scholarship, the miscellaneous stuff that also goes into it. So you get the bare minimum in your scholarship, you know. And so, you know, it's like if you like to eat a certain type of food, if you like to do certain types of things, they don't really support you in that way. And so it becomes more of like well-being for, you know, a student athlete. Well-being, they don't cover those costs of well-being. So you have to subsidize that. For me, I was fortunate to have, you know, my dad help me out a little bit. I ended up taking out loans. And so, you know, the joy of not leaving with debt, I wasn't fortunate enough to have that. Just because even though I was on a full scholarship. And so, so those things kind of just like they matter. And so afterwards, I ended up writing my master's thesis, writing my first book, and then I got involved with the Business of Amateurs. And the Business of Amateurs, it ended up being like a study or a Kickstarter project that was a documentary that got picked up by, you know, a whole bunch of places, Amazon, you know, Hulu, stuff like that. And it explores all the different trials and tribulations of the business of college athletics. So the summary is the NCAA is the face for college athletics, and it generates billions of dollars every year for the top universities in the United States. This is the first documentary that challenges the NCAA from the perspective of former student athletes. Director Bob DeMars, a former USC football player, interviewed former student athletes to find the problems and potential solutions regarding players' rights, and you know, just dealing with them and kind of putting the faces to a lot of the different things that were happening. You know, healthcare, you know, the opportunity to, you know, compete in the free market, to pursue liberties that that other students have, and also not be ostracized without due process when things happen. You know, because you get all these different cases of, you know, people getting caught on like sexual harassment cases that you find out they didn't do any of that stuff and they lost their opportunities because there wasn't no due process. And so if you guys are interested, you guys could check out the movie. It's The Business of Amateurs. It's on Hulu. You could watch it on Amazon. You could watch it on YouTube. And then from there, I did another project called The Money in the Barter, which is kind of like the intro to the documentary. And so I'll post the links to that as well. And that was kind of like the business, you know, pretty much the whole thing, the whole point in like 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And so from there, I also got involved in the college player, the National College Players Association, which is your College Athlete Players Association, CAPA. And they're an organization that, are working for the rights of student athletes. And so, for them, they're like, they're led by the current former student athletes, including former UCLA player Ramogi Huma, founder of the National College Players Association, former U.S. Mass basketball player Luke Boner, and a former college Northwestern quarterback Kane Coulter, where all they're doing is fighting for the rights of athletes, you know, and according to them, you know, college athletes are getting screwed. They're getting injured. They're dealing with concussion-related deaths. The NCAA the NCAA enforcement staff has suspended players for selling their own bowl rings, but admits it will not punish the coaches for unknowingly putting the players in with concussions back in the game. The NCAA continues to look the other way, amidst data showing that half of the athletic trainers report being pressured by coaches to play concussed players. It's just a lot of dirty stuff that is happening. And for me, I've seen it personally where you see people be taken to the back. They'll put IVs in them and they'll like shoot them up with stuff and then they'll put them back in the game because, it's a big game and stuff like that. For the most part, like $1.2 billion in new TV revenue is flooding the NCAA sports, yet players are often too stuck with sports-related medical expenses, can lose their scholarships if they are permanently injured, and full scholarships are capped by the NCAA below the cost of attendance by $3,000 to $5,000 per player per year. The data has shown that virtually all of the new athletic revenues generated over the last several decades has been spent on excessive salaries and luxury athletic facilities, while college athletes are being denied basic protections. The NCAA sports has used false notions of amateurism as a guise to siphon revenue that would otherwise be used to protect the college athletes. And the NCAA policymakers are paid handsomely so that these systems don't change. And what CAP is trying to do is they're trying to empower student athletes to change the unjust rules and stuff. And the thing is, like, as much as I love, Oregon State and I love all the things that they've done for me, when I was getting involved with them and they were, doing all these different changes, I reached out to the College Players Association, mainly Kane, and we were trying to get something started. And then it came to the point where, the people that I had on campus helping me out, they were inadvertently getting told not to get involved with College Players Association, and particularly trying to organize students to get stuff done. Because in Oregon, Oregon's a great place for like labor laws, and like they treat their employees, everybody treats their employees good. And so having the opportunity to make student athletes employees, it allows for you to get these protections, get these unions started, get all these things started. That way, if something bad does happen, you have somebody that's fighting on your behalf. But with Oregon State, they essentially were going to threaten people's jobs and their job stability, essentially, in order to not have this go forward. So being that I'm in Portland, I wasn't able to do as much as I wanted to, and it became really exhausting trying to drive up and back and forth to Corvallis. But with that being said, they weren't trying to go that extra route, just because it puts them in a conflicting way, especially if they're not winning a lot, especially if they're not doing all these different things that they're doing, especially, and all this stuff compared to Oregon, Oregon and Portland State and all those other places in the Pac-12, and it was just kind of sad. And so for me, it's like, okay, when people talk about, is it good we shouldn't play the players and all this stuff, they get a scholarship and stuff. It's like, well, at the end of the day, like, based on my research, like scholarship athletes are, based on their scholarship athletes are getting paid like, what, $5 an hour, $4 an hour for all the work that they're doing. And so, and they're making the companies a lot more money than what they're getting. They're getting a fraction of it. And even if you're a bench warmer and stuff like that, you still have a role on the team. And so, so there's guys that are walk-ons that are doing stuff. There's guys that are on scholarship that are trying to like release music that are getting banned. They're losing their eligibility just because they're posting stuff on iTunes. It's like that stuff isn't cool. And so if they're not going to pay players, then they need to take off all these restrictions to where they're not going to get in trouble for selling their own stuff. They're not going to get in trouble for, like getting sponsorships for the stuff that they do. They're not going to get in trouble for going into the free market with the skills that they have, and trying to capitalize on it. Because as long as they go on, like, their role as a football player isn't their themselves, but it's the role that they have. If they play and they do well, cool. And if they want to do some stuff afterwards and try to make a little bit of money afterwards, sell some autographs and stuff, cool. Not everybody's going to get paid thousands of dollars for an autograph, but also, a regular student could sign an autograph or could have a social media following. And if you're going to treat them if you want them to be treated like regular students, actually treat them like regular students on both sides. And don't have this weird pseudo just trash, things need to be a lot better. And so until things get a lot better, I was probably not going to get any, if things don't get a lot better, there's going to be a breaking point, because people are going to start speaking out a lot more, and it's going to hit people's bottom dollar. It's going to hit people in the pockets a lot more. And so, we had a recent wave of it, and then it kind of subsided and things were changed, but not really that much. And so I think until people, more and more injuries start to happen and there's more accountability, we're probably not going to see much. You could tell that it's like gun rights. It's people are okay with it until bad things happen, and then people are going to be aware of concussions more. People are going to be aware of the bureaucracy of it. But until then, we're probably not going to see much of it until another big name case goes about it a different way. Unless somebody up and leaves for the draft and after 1 year tries to dodge NCAA, we're probably not going to see any. You just never know. You never know. And so with that, that's my time. I will catch you guys on the flip side. I'll post this. This is, what is this? Wednesday, November 14th. Yeah, Wednesday, November 14th. So I'm going to post this up, post the links to it, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. So, adios.